Hello, my name is Timothy Truong, and I'm going to give my review on Kundo, Age of the Rampant. I'm going to put the slides in the description below, so don't worry if you can't keep up. Let's get started. This is the theatrical poster for this film. The director is Yoo Jung-bin. He was born on December 20th, 1979 in Busan, South Korea. He went to Chang'an University, majored in filmmaking. His films include The Unforgiven in 2005, which won several film awards, The Moonlight of Seoul in 2008, and Nameless Gangster: Rules of Time in 2012. His thoughts and inspiration. He said that I tapped into movies that I used to love as a child. Rather than making an intellectual film, I wanted to get hearts racing. What he wants to convey to the audience is that by not giving the protagonist hero-like characteristics, the message is that it is not the special or talented people, but very ordinary people who can change the world, especially when gathered in masses. This film was released on July 23, 2014 in South Korea and August 29, 2014 in the US. It's the all-time highest opening day box office in South Korea for both a foreign and domestic film during that time. It drew in $4 million and 552,000 viewers on the first day. Its ratings on IMDb is 6.8 out of 10, Rotten Tomatoes 82%, Metacritic 56%, and out of the Google users, 89% of them like this movie. These are the awards for Kundo. The most common are Best Cinematography and Best Music. The cast includes Ha Jong-woo, who plays the protagonist Domichi or Dolchi, who's a former butcher who joins a band of outlaws called the Kundo to avenge the deaths of his mother and sister. The antagonist is played by Gang Dong-won, who plays Jo Yoon, a nobleman's son who is gifted in martial arts but has no rights as his mother was only a concubine and thus his father refuses to acknowledge him. Next in the cast is Lee Sung-min, who plays Dae-ho, leader of the Kundo, and Lee Gung-young, who plays Tae-chu, the vicious mug, also mood maker of the Kundo. Also part of the cast is Cho Jin-won, who plays Lee Tae-ki, a thief who used to be an aristocrat, Yoo Jun-hee, who plays Ma Yang, Ma Dong-suk, who plays Chumbo, and Kim Jae-young, who plays Gumsan, and they are all part of the Kundo. So this film takes place in the year 1862 in the late Joseon dynasty. Joseon has a caste system with 4 classes, Yongbon being top class, Chungin being middle people, Sangmin being commoners, and Chomin being lowest class. Yongbon are the scholarly gentry, the ruling class and recipient of privileges. They are the aristocrats, held high positions in government, did not pay any form of taxes, avoided manual labor, excelled in calligraphy, poetry, classical Chinese texts, and Confucian rites. Chungin are small but important class. They are the technical experts, being interpreters, scribes, astronomers, accountants, physicians, jurors, musicians, and provincial small office holders. They oversaw local bureaucracy. Many of them became wealthy. Those who spoke foreign languages were first introduced to the Western culture. They include illegitimate children of Yongbon, born from commoner or slave concubines like Jo Yoon. They are not allowed to be recognized as Yongbon and could not inherit land or wealth from their fathers or participate in government exams. Sangmin are the commoners. They make up about 80% of the Joseon society. They are a free class, obligated to pay taxes, serve in the army, undertake unpaid, unfree labor. They include peasants, artisans, fishermen, and merchants, and some peasants own their land, others are tenants in Yongbon property. Chomin are the outsider class. They include slaves, which you can read more about. There are also professionals dealing with animal slaughter, such as butchers or people with animal skins, just like Domichi. They include innkeepers, jasings, women from outcast or slave families, entertainers, gravediggers, bark peelers, shamans, and ferrymen. All these classes are hereditary status, so children could not advance on the social ladder. And this is an example of Chomin. So this film takes place in the late Joseon dynasty, which was a period of social and economic unrest in Korea. It was also a time of great tyranny. Due to continuous natural disasters and poor harvests, poverty, hunger, and death are rampant. The aristocracy ruled the country and concerned only with their own wealth. they exploit and persecute the poor. In these turbulent times, a band of fighters named Kundo rise against the authorities. They raid corrupt officials, then share their loot with the vulnerable and impoverished. While the king stands powerless against them, Kundo becomes a figure of fear to undeserving nobles, and a ray of hope in the lives of long-suffering citizens. The members of Kundo believe that their cause is more important than their own lives. From the beginning of the film, we are exposed to Jo Yoon's rough childhood, where he was raised by a woman in a brothel until he is 8, and then taken by his father, only to be completely cast aside once his father's legitimate wife births a son. Prior to being cast aside, a young Jo Yoon almost suffocates his helpless half-brother, but he is stopped and severely punished before he could carry out the deed. His birth mother is killed for his actions, and this punishment only skews his moral compass further, while also deepening his desire to be acknowledged by his father. Eventually, Jo Yoon's younger half-brother is killed, and Jo Yoon schemes to kill his half-brother's pregnant wife in an attempt to secure the position as his father's heir. Jo Yoon hires Domachi, who was born a poor butcher, and the two men strike a dangerous deal for Domachi to kill his half-brother's wife, who was pregnant, for money. But Domachi could not do it, which led him losing his mother and sister in a fire ordered by Jo Yoon as a result. Domachi tries to get revenge on him the first time, but Jo Yoon won easily. After being saved from death by the Kundo, Domachi joins them and is accepted as a member of Kundo, which opens his eyes to the world. Reborn under a new name Dolchi, he draws his sword out of his sheath and disperses the shadow cast on the poor and helpless. The rest of the film is them being righteous thieves, stealing from the aristocrats and giving to the poor, with Dolchi cutting out the top knot on the aristocrat's head. In Joseon culture, the top knot is known as a sign of manhood and elicited respect and dignity from other men in society. It turns out the baby was born and still alive, which made Jo Yoon eager to kill him, and was almost as successful until Dolchi appears, wanting revenge on the man who took away his family. Standing in front of Jo Yoon, Dolchi challenges his archenemy Jo Yoon to a final duel. In the end, Jo Yoon dies holding his nephews from Dolchi's sword, making Dolchi victorious. From what I learned and observed, the first is the complexity of Jo Yoon's character. All he ever wanted was to be acknowledged by his father. Jo Yoon acquired more health and power than his father ever held through morally corrupt means, yet his father is still unwilling to acknowledge Jo Yoon as his own son. His father gave up on him the moment his legitimate half-brother was born, yet Jo Yoon is never able to come to terms with this reality, which leads to his willingness to commit atrocious deeds in hopes of acceptance from his father. Even after the legitimate son perished, his father was resilient in not accepting Jo Yoon, which showcases the harsh reality of illegitimate children during the Joseon dynasty. The second thing that I learned was the corruption of the caste system during the Joseon dynasty, because the aristocrats portrayed in the movie would enjoy all the food and land and want more of it, while the common people were already in hunger and poverty. For example, Jo Yoon had tricked the common people to give up their land to get rice from the government, thus making them slaves. He did this by bribing and gaining support of the governor, then was able to access to a list of people who borrowed rice from the government but could not repay. After officers were sent to harass and claim the payment, Jo Yoon would loan rice without interest if land papers were given as collateral. This method allowed Jo Yoon to gain an abundance of land as well as slaves, since many of borrowers were illiterate and did not read the fine print. These corrupt methods were used to increase their wealth and widen the gap between the rich and the poor during the late Joseon dynasty. Here are the reasons why you should watch this film. It's action-packed, has a Western cowboy style, it's a Robin Hood group of people, it has great character arcs with Dolmachi and Jo Yoon, and has great fight scenes between Kundo and the army, and also Jo Yoon and Dolmachi. And here are the resources, and I hope you guys will watch this movie. Thank you so much.